Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be deconstructing exactly how brands manage to capture our attention, shape our perceptions, and ultimately drive our behaviors. Seriously, if you've ever stopped to wonder why you instinctively reach for a very specific brand of toothpaste, or how a company somehow convinces you to upgrade a perfectly fine phone, well, you're absolutely in the right place. So let's dive right into the fascinating world of marketing communication. Let's kick things off with a pretty fundamental question. Is a great product enough? Just think about it for a second. You could engineer literally the most revolutionary, life-changing gadget in human history, a real game changer. But here's the universal truth of business. If your target customers don't know it exists, don't understand what it does, or have no clue what it costs, it is just going to sit on a shelf collecting dust. Building it isn't enough. Production alone does not equal success. A company actually has to manage a really complex communication system to bridge the gap between their creation and, well, your wallet. So here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. First, why promotion matters. Second, the communication process. Third, the promotion mix. And finally, number 4, the factors shaping that mix. All right, section 1, why promotion matters. Pretty much every single ad you see serves three distinct purposes. First up, informing, right? Like if a refrigerator manufacturer decides to offer a massive off-season discount, they absolutely have to tell you the price and the dates. Otherwise, the discount is completely useless. Second is persuading. Look, we don't have the time to test out every single competing product out there, so promotion steps in to persuade you to choose their brand over the guy next door. And finally, reminding. You might ask, why do massive, established companies still advertise to loyal buyers of, say, Lux soap or Colgate toothpaste? It's because even fiercely loyal customers need a little reminding that the product serves them well, before some competitor swoops in and steals them away. Moving on to section 2, the communication process. Okay, so any act of communication basically involves 2 major players. You've got the sender, or the source, who engages in the mental gymnastics of taking a raw idea and putting it into a form that can actually be shared. And then, on the other side, you've got the receiver. Now, this is absolutely crucial. The receiver is an active participant. How you, as the receiver, assign meaning to a brand's message depends entirely on your own attitudes, your past experiences, your current needs, and honestly, even just the timing of when you see it. Now, between that sender and receiver, there's this sequential journey that takes place. First is encoding, because obviously you can't just beam a raw thought directly into someone's head. So the sender translates their idea into symbols. We're talking words, pictures, gestures, whatever. Next, they have to select the medium, which is just the actual channel that carries those symbols. And finally, decoding happens. This is where the receiver attempts to convert all those symbols back into a meaningful message inside their own mind. And oh man, this next example brilliantly illustrates what happens when that decoding process goes completely off the rails. If you fly with us, you will never walk again. Believe it or not, a famous airline actually ran this as their slogan. The sender encoded this message trying to say, their service was so luxurious you'd never want to walk again. But the receivers? They decoded it as a horrifying physical threat. Just a massive communication fail. That whole airline mishap is a truly perfect example of our next concept, which is noise. Noise is literally anything that interferes with the communication process. It's the reason a receiver ends up getting a totally different message than what the sender intended, or maybe they get no message at all. Noise could be a poorly translated phrase, like that airline slogan, or it could be a literal physical distraction. Imagine having way too many competing advertisements crammed onto the exact same magazine page. That's visual noise. Let's look at how the medium itself actually affects this whole process. When a brand uses interpersonal media, so think of a salesperson standing right in front of you, communication flows in both directions. The sender gets immediate, direct feedback and can tweak their pitch right there on the fly, which gives them incredible control. Conversely, when we talk about mass media like television, billboards, or print ads, it reaches a massive audience all at once, but it is highly non-personal. The feedback is super slow and really hard to obtain. Honestly, the sender usually has to conduct entirely separate market research just to figure out if anyone even remembered seeing the ad. Let's get into section 3, the promotion mix. The promotion mix is defined as a careful blending of specific communication tools. You see, business enterprises rarely rely on just one single method. It's too risky. Instead, they strategically mix advertising, personal selling, sales promotion, and publicity to hit their organizational goals. You can think of it like a recipe, really, where the proportions of the ingredients change depending on exactly what you're trying to bake. So let's compare these 4 core ingredients. First, advertising. This is your indirect mass communication that happens on an ongoing basis. It's paid for and it has a very clear sponsor. Personal selling, on the other hand, is direct, face-to-face, and recurring. Then there's sales promotion. This is an indirect, short-term burst of activity. Think of a weekend discount code designed to just instantly stimulate sales. And finally, publicity. Now this one is indirect and highly irregular, basically happening only when a company does something newsworthy enough for the media to actually cover it for free. Now, because companies are using all these different tools, and keep in mind, they're often being designed by completely different teams within the same company, there is a massive risk of delivering a blurred or even conflicting message to the public. And this brings us to integrated marketing communication, or IMC. IMC is absolutely crucial. It's the practice of coordinating every single promotional tool so that no matter where a customer interacts with the brand, whether it's a giant billboard, a tiny coupon, or chatting with a salesperson, they receive a clear, consistent, and totally unified picture. And our final section, Section 4, Factors Shaping the Mix. How a company blends this mix isn't just random guesswork. It's dictated by 4 primary categories of influencing factors. First are product-related factors. So, how complex or expensive is the item? Second are customer-related factors, which really look at the specific characteristics of your target market. Third, we have organization-related factors. This one heavily relies on the company's available budget. I mean, personal selling is incredibly expensive per contact when you compare it to mass advertising. And fourth, situation-related factors, like exactly what the competition is up to in the market at any given moment. Let's look at a really stark, practical contrast just to make this super concrete. If you're selling an inexpensive, frequently bought consumer good, say a simple bar of soap or a bag of potato chips, your unit price is tiny. You literally cannot afford to send a salesperson to someone's house to pitch them a bar of soap. It makes no sense. So you rely heavily on mass advertising. On the flip side, if you're selling highly complex industrial products, like huge electrical generators or manufacturing equipment, a catchy billboard isn't going to cut it. You absolutely require the direct interpersonal effort of personal selling to explain those technical specs and close a really high-dollar deal. Another massive factor here is the overarching strategy the organization chooses to employ. Generally, they have to choose between a push strategy and a pull strategy. In a push strategy, the producer actively promotes their product to the intermediaries, like the wholesalers and the retailers. The producer pushes the product to the store, and then the store pushes it onto you. But a pull strategy flips that whole thing on its head. The producer focuses their promotional efforts directly on you, the final buyer. They advertise so heavily that you walk right into the store and demand the product, essentially pulling it all the way through the supply chain. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a little something to think about, something you can apply to your own life. Think about the very last significant purchase you made. Was it a new computer, maybe a fresh pair of sneakers? Now ask yourself this. Which specific aspect of the promotional mix actually brought you to that decision? Was it some flashy mass advertising that caught your eye? Was it an article you read thanks to good publicity? A short-term sales promotion discount? Or maybe the expertise of a salesperson? Chances are, if the company practiced good integrated marketing communication, it was a perfectly blended mix of all of them, working quietly behind the scenes to capture your attention. Thank you so much for joining me for today's explainer, and keep analyzing those messages around you.